Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Darrell Owens, and we're back for another episode of One on One. Week 12 of the NFL season is upon thou, and we're excited. Why? Because there's more NFL football. But the sad thing, and we talk about this every single season we've done this, that means we're getting closer and closer to the end of the NFL season. And I don't know, this year to me went by faster, or is going by faster than any year before. It could be because I'm getting older. I don't know, but nevertheless, it's going by way too fast. But we are in week 12, and next week we got Thanksgiving, so we'll have our earliest show next week, where our show will start at 12-ish, around like 11:45, 12 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day, because there's 3 games that we got to preview before we even get into the week. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on in the next couple of weeks, but your boy is very excited for another edition of One on One, and just to get into a whole bunch of good stuff. With that being said, tonight we've got Texans versus Bills from Houston. Houston is cranking up lately. They've been doing some pretty good things. The Bills are the Bills, and you're always going to see some type of hype with that team. So it could be something. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if the Bills can actually do what they have not been able to do the last 5 or 6, 7 years that Josh Allen has been the quarterback. He's been the quarterback. But with all that being said, I'm yapping. Let's go ahead and get into it. Episode 190, 10 away, baby, of One on One will begin now. One, 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 one. Welcome to the one-on-one. When it comes to ratings, man, we number one. I get the truth, then I give them the scoop. If anybody got a question, I give them the proof. Welcome to the one-on-one. When it comes to ratings, man, we number one. I get the truth, then I give them the scoop. If anybody got a question, I give them the proof. Welcome to One-on-One at Legacy Maker Sports Network. Yeah. That's right. Episode 190 of 101 here on the Legacy Maker Sports Network, and of course, airing on the amazing Bowie Television. Look, we are here to bring you another edition of 101, but most importantly, to just break things down, to see where we stand in this power ranking as we head into another week of great football. There's 4 teams on bye this week, so we're going to get about 14 games this week. So that'll all be fun. Next week will be a little bit weird. Everybody plays next week because of how Thanksgiving is done. So there's usually no buys during that week. So you'll have 3 games on. You have the 3 games on Thanksgiving Day, and then I believe it's 12 to 13 on. It should be like 12 on Sunday, and then of course the Monday night game. So a lot going on in the next 2 weeks in the NFL as we get closer to December. And December football means we're inching closer to playoff football. And tonight's game is a big one in that, because you've got a Bills team that is, 7-3. They're, still fighting for positioning in their own division, not even in the conference, but in their own division. They're trying to keep pace with the Patriots, who are leading the division. If you're the Texans, you're a team that struggled early in the season, and they're on a win streak right now. They're back at 500, and they're trying to find their way without their starting quarterback, C.J. Stroud, who's been out for the last couple of weeks ever since he, had that injury in that game against Denver, which was a really tough one. So Davis Mills has been running the ship, and he's got to win in 2 in there. So we'll see if he can keep things going tonight against the Bills. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the power rankings. And we start off with the bottom. All right. The bottom for week 12, or at least entering into week 12. At number 32, who would be surprised? The Tennessee Titans. Look, Tennessee actually gave the Texans everything they could handle in that matchup on Sunday. And the Texans, do what they had to do. They get the dub in the end. This Titans team, unfortunately, couldn't even really get things going the way they wanted to go, because They get Calvin Ridley back and then lose Calvin Ridley not even a few minutes, I believe, into the game, and he was out. So he had just came back from injury, right back on injury. And it sucks for Calvin Ridley because Calvin Ridley is a really good receiver, and you hate to see these injuries pile up on him. You remember he lost that year because of the gambling situation. It's crazy stuff. So, and in my opinion, he's a very critical part to Cam Ward's development this year, having a really solid receiver to throw the football to. But it's been a really rough year for Cam Ward and the Titans. They're 1-9. And at the way things are standing, they have the number one pick of the draft this year, so they could have back-to-back with number one picks. The question is, do they keep that pick? Do they decide to trade it out since they already have their quarterback, and they try to gain more draft picks to get more pieces? It'll be very interesting. But it's still early, and they still could win games. But as of now, that's kind of the situation that's developing in Tennessee. At 31, the New York Football Giants. I want to give the New York Football Giants a shout-out. Jameis Winston came in there against Green Bay. I felt like he did a really good job, only making one mistake, and that was at the very end with the interception. And then I think you saw, not Myles Garrett, excuse me, Michael Fitzpatrick, Michael Parsons go out there and show why Green Bay paid all the money they did to get him. And so this Giants team gave Green Bay everything they can handle. This Giants team should probably be 6-3. They should be contending with the Eagles for that division. They're the only one in the division that have beaten the Eagles. Obviously, the Commanders haven't played them yet, but the Giants have beat the Eagles, and they should probably be in a way better position than they are. It's been a weird season there. Injuries have hurt two of their top new stars, I guess you could say, with Neighbors, who's been there for a couple years, but he's a big star. Then you lose Scatterboo, who was so crucial. They had to go through the Russell Wilson situation. It's just a lot. Jackson Dart got hurt last week. Got to shoot Jameis Winston, and how much people just love Jameis Winston to win, lose, or draw. And so the Giants situation is interesting. Who's going to coach that team next year will be critical. I've heard some names, Belichick's and Lane Kiffin's and all that. Kiffin would make a little sense because of his relationship with Dart. But I'm intrigued to see where the Giants go with them. They're at 31. At 30, the New Orleans Saints. Boy. Well, the Saints were on a bye last week, so thank goodness I don't have to talk about them. But they're at number 30. At 29, the Vegas Raiders. Monday night's game against Dallas was just rough. The Raiders are so bad. I mean, these bottom teams are bad. Like, I've in years past, some of the bottom teams had okay, they should be better. The Giants in this group, and I would even say the Jets, in my opinion, should be better teams than what they are. Not saying that they should be in the playoffs. Well, the Giants, I feel like, should be, but the Jets probably should be more around the 500 mark. But their quarterback play has been miserable. The Giants, same dream a little bit until they got Dart in there. Sorry, Russell. But they just couldn't pull off wins. And they just these losses that they had like 10-point leads in 3 or 4 straight games and lost all those games. That's why Brian Daboll's not there. He probably would have got another year. It's just weird how this bottom, especially this bottom half, that bottom 6, it's just weird. But the Raiders losing that game to Dallas, and it was just really, you don't expect the Raiders to win. That's just vibe-wise. They haven't given you anything to give you any okay, yeah, they got this. And I seen them in person back in week 3 when they played Washington. And we've seen how rough Washington has had it. And Washington blew the brakes off of the Raiders. At 28, the Cleveland Browns. Look, I want to give Cleveland a shout-out because Cleveland had the Ravens in that game. And Dylan Gabriel went out due to concussion. They had the lead when Shedeur Sanders finally got an opportunity to start, or at least play, I should say. Let me not say start. He will get a chance to start this week when they play the Raiders, so I'm excited to see what he can do full week of practice as the starter. But you also got to remember this man has also not had any first-team reps until this week in the entire season. I think some in the preseason, but during this time, no, none with the first team. So I don't know what Kevin Stefanski's doing out there, but by all means, unless he just don't want this job anymore. That's what it feels like. But that'll be an interesting matchup between the Raiders and the Browns this week, and Shedeur getting a chance to start. But back to that game against the Ravens, Shedeur came in. It looked rough. 4 for 16, but he did make some great plays towards the end of the game to at least try to get them back and at least tie the game. There was opportunities there. It just didn't happen. And, he's taking a lot of criticism. The kid can't do anything. He can't do anything without getting criticized. It feels like, and it's hard to see that happen for him. And some people say, oh, well, he brought it on himself. He's arrogant, da, 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 da. What, because he does what a lot of people do that are famous athletes. He's got confidence, which I don't see as a problem. Let the guy, he's a young man. I don't know if you can see the cockiness, but that's what people try to equate to him. And I don't think he's got a lot of good qualities that people look past because of, he's confident. And I don't want to call him cocky yet because I haven't seen any cocky traits personally. People say, oh, because they retired his number. Now, he could have easily said, no, don't do that. But, look, that's a proud father of his son. I don't agree with it personally, but I get it. It's like when people made fun of LeVar Ball for the things he was doing for his kids, but he had 3 kids doing great in life. Even Jello got there, swerve on that corner, whoa, all that fun stuff. Like that's to me, I like to see a father trying to help their kids, do the thing. But I'm getting way off topic. Browns are at 28, 27. The Jets. Yeah, the Jets are the Jets. There's no nice way to put that, and that's just who they are. They started off that game on Thursday night last week, scored the opening touchdown, looked good on that first drive. After that, it was just, and the Patriots did what they needed to do. At 26, the Washington Commanders. Now, I'm disappointed because I did not go to Spain. My colleague, Candy Wallace, she went to Spain on behalf of Bowie Television. I wasn't there. And I watched the game early Sunday and just was truly disappointed the way it ended because I felt like they played well enough to win the game and probably the best game. Their best game they played since they played the best game they played since they played the Chargers. And they had chances and it just didn't happen that way. That Mariota interception that hurt. Matt Gay missing field goals. He's no longer there. They signed Jake Moody off the practice squad from Chicago. It's just, I felt like if you don't win that game, it's going to be hard to win these rest of the way because there's some teams out there that are hungry and they've got some tough matchups, some solid matchups. If they're going to win any of these games, maybe the Giants game, they might get lucky against Minnesota, but I don't see it that way at the current time. At 25, the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona, not so hot themselves. In their contest, they did what they could against the 49ers, and the 49ers just broke it bad on them, 41-22. Shout out to Jacoby Brissett, setting the NFL record for most completions in the game with 47. He went 47 for 57. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. I mean, they just didn't win the game, but 47 for 57 is pretty good. Cardinals at 25. At 24, the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are hard to watch. That's the nicest thing I can say. They battled with the Panthers. Panthers ended up winning the game. Ended up sweeping them for the year, which I did not have on my bingo card. Division opponent or not, I just didn't have that happening. It was very interesting to see. But this Falcons team, now that Penix is hurt, they've got Kirk Cousins at starter. They should not be as bad as they are, personally. They loaded up in the offseason on defense. And then on top of that, I feel like you got 3 young, talented guys in all the skill positions. And maybe you want to include in Penix too, but he's still learning. But, Robinson, Pitts should be way better than what he is. But I feel like he's just been in a bad situation from the jump. Like, there's no coordinator that has helped him. Like, if he's in a team that favors the tight end, I feel like he thrives. And it just hasn't happened. And maybe that's just me making an excuse. And I think that's everybody just hoping that this guy that was a 4th pick of the draft a few years back just blossomed. And I still feel like it can happen. Because I've seen the games that I've seen him play, and I've seen him play, I believe, 3 times. He's had solid games in the games that I've seen him play when they played against Washington. So it's mind-boggling to me that he is not more productive on the field or is not targeted more. Maybe I'm just not seeing in the games up close, but that's what it feels like. At 23, the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati got destroyed by Pittsburgh. Didn't expect it. Jamar Chase out here spitting in people's faces, and then had the nerve to go on TV right after the game when they asked him, "Hey, did you spit on Jalen Ramsey?" And this man said, "Nah, I ain't never do that." They got this man spitting in 4K, better yet 8K, spit right in that man's face. No issues. I said, Lord, it's just the most mind-boggling thing for me, but it is what it is. He's been suspended for a game, and the Bengals are 3-7. But good news, Bengals fans, Joe Burrow might come back, and if he comes back, it may not be this week, but if they can find a way to win this week, and then, who knows, win the rest of the way out, you might make the playoffs. Who knows? Bengals at 23. At 22, the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are fighting back, and they're trying to find a way to have Mike McDaniel keep his job. It hasn't been pretty, but they have won, I believe, 3 out of their last 4, and I could be wrong on that, but I believe they won 3 out of their last 4. And so seeing this team kind of try to figure it out a little bit, it has been, nice for them. So they had won 3 out of the last 4. They beat the Falcons. They lost to the Ravens. They beat the Dolphins. Beat the Bills. I guess you could beat themselves. And then they also beat the Commanders this past week. And then they got the Saints. So now, if you're the Dolphins, you got a chance to be 5-7, and then all of a sudden, you back in the mix. You back in the mix. Then they got the Jets. If this goes right, the Dolphins could be 6-7 around my birthday when they take on December 15th, second day of the year. By the time they take on the Steelers, and then they got the Bengals and the I keep saying the Dolphins. They got the Steelers. The rest of the way, they have the Saints, the Jets, that could be 2 wins. Then they have the Steelers, which the Steelers have been playing kind of wonky. That's a Monday night game. Then they have the Bengals, and we don't know what they're going to look like if Joe Burrow will be back, so on and so on. Then they have the Buccaneers and the Patriots. So they got 2 tough ones to end the season, but they could maybe even go into those last 2 games of the season, maybe 8-9, or excuse me, not say 8-9, but like 7-8 or 7-7. Who knows? They may have a shot at it, 7-8, something like that. But we'll see. But they're playing decent football, right? They're playing better football, but we'll see. At 21, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings had a really good matchup against the Bears. Bears end up winning in the end. But this Vikings team is still a team to me also where they're trying to find their identity at the quarterback position. So that's something that still I think is kind of hurting them. They had that last year, but I'm not going to get into that. All right, here it is, the bottom. Titans, Giants, Saints, Raiders, Browns, Jets, Commanders. We've got the Cardinals. We got the Falcons. We have the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the last team at the bottom, the Minnesota Vikings. Man, I know I took a little time on that, but had to get some stuff out. You know what I'm saying? But let's go ahead and get into the outside looking in. All right, outside looking in at number 20, the Dallas Cowboys. They get a win against the Raiders, and pretty impressive win against the Raiders on Monday night, and a much needed win. Dallas was trying to honor their fallen teammate who passed away a couple of weeks ago, unfortunately because of unfortunately due to suicide. So it's good to see Dallas get a win and kind of do that for their fallen teammate. It was a really, really, really good deal. So shout out to Dallas and going out there and showing love to their guy. At 19, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs lose to the Broncos, and the Broncos lead in the division is at right now with 3.5 technically, based off of how everything kind of played. So the Chiefs are in trouble. They're like maybe 2.5 games out of the final wild card, or no, excuse me, they're like a game out of the final wild card spot. But that's Jacksonville, so technically they're 2 because Jacksonville has the head-to-head matchup over them. So we'll see if the Chiefs can figure it out the rest of the way. The 18 team, the Texans, Titans, gotta always get it flipped. The Texans, they just shouldn't be this close. The Texans are 5-5. They get a solid win in their game against the Titans. It wasn't the greatest, but they got the win. They're 5-5. At 17, the Ravens, comeback victory against the Browns in Shadour's first time, and they gave Shador the business, man. They were chasing Shador down, but they did what they needed to do to get the win, move back to 500, and guess what? They're only a game out of the division because the Steelers have decided since they were 4-1 to go 2-3, and they've just not been able to. They could have really opened this thing up, and they just didn't. Now Aaron Rodgers is hurt with a injury, I believe, to his left. I don't know if it's a throwing hand or the right hand, but a throwing hand or the other opposite hand, and he's got a fracture there, so that could be a problem. And so we'll see. But Ravens at 17, at 16, the Carolina Panthers, 6-5 Carolina Panthers. They are one of the teams that I said that could shock people this year, and they're doing it. They're 6-5. Heck, they beat the Packers. They beat the Falcons twice, and they are not that far off. They could, if things go the certain way, the Carolina Panthers could be the division leaders here in the next week or so, depending on, because the Buccaneers have some really tough games, and the Carolina could just sneak right on in and take the division lead. Isn't that crazy? Who would have thought Carolina Panthers take the division lead? Whew. We shall see. We'll see if it happens. At 15, of course, the Steelers. At 14, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, they're lost to Buffalo 44-32. Tampa Bay's got some injuries. They're still trying to figure things out, but they were so good earlier in the season. And they're still a team I wouldn't want to face under certain circumstances, but they're struggling right now. And then I believe this week they play the Rams. And so it doesn't get any better. That's the Sunday night game. Whew. Man, they're in trouble. And if they lose and Carolina wins, oh, the whirlwinds begin in the NFC South. At 13, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars got themselves a win this past week over the Chargers, an impressive win, 35-6. Didn't see that being, I had them winning, but I didn't have it like that. So they came out and showed the team that I thought they could be throughout this season. At 12, the Detroit Lions. Tough loss for Detroit against the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles in a 16-9 game. At times this season, I've seen this Lions team and said, whew, boy, that Lions team is dangerous. Boy, they're going to be a really tough, team to beat. I've seen it in person. That way they beat up on Washington, but like I said, that's a whole different dream. But seeing how crisp they can be, and I'm like, this team is really good. But then they have a game like this, and they're still trying to fit. To me, it feels like they're still trying to figure themselves out after losing both coordinators. It's always hard for a team to bounce back the way you want them to bounce back when you lose both coordinators. And they lost both coordinators last year. And so we shall see. At number 11, the San Diego Chargers, a.k.a. the LA Chargers. Chargers get beat up by the Jaguars in another disappointing performance. This is a team that, yes, they got 7 wins, but it's just like you never know what you're going to get from them on a week-to-week basis. And as my man Lamont Thomas would say, the Chargers are going to charge. And that's what they did last week. They charged. They're still hanging in the mix, but you just never know what you get from this team. All right, the outside looking in. We've got the Cowboys, the Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, Panthers, Steelers, Bucks, Jaguars, Lions, and at number 11, the San Diego, a.k.a. LA Chargers. There it is, outside looking in. Outside looking in, locked and loaded. Now let's go ahead and let you know if the number 1 team last week can be number 1 for a third straight week. Well, let's find out in the top 10. All right, top 10. At number 10, the San Francisco 49ers have found their way back into the top 10 after that 41-22 victory over the Cardinals. They get their man Brock Purdy back, that efficiency, that 19 for 26, 3 touchdowns, 200 yards. Great day for Purdy. McCaffrey's starting to feel his way a little bit, 13 carries for 81 yards. Kittle had 2 touchdowns. They still need, I don't know if Ayuk's coming back this season. I don't know how bad this injury is, but if he comes back, I feel like he's been gone for way past a year, so the rehab must not be going well. I haven't heard anything, and maybe I should do a little bit more research on it, but I just haven't heard anything. But if they can get him back and, actually use him, they paid him all his money, and he's only played like 3 games since they paid him. So that's why you see a lot of these GMs saying, nah, I'm going to hold off, bro. But anywho, at 10, San Francisco. At number 9, the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay almost screwed the pooch last Sunday against the Giants. Y'all know how I felt last week. Your boy was not in a good place last week on this episode. I'm a little bit better this week, based off of a little bit better performance. And they did what they needed to do, but the Giants played them well, and the Giants could have won that game. Shout out to Malik Willis for coming in when needed and putting a drive together to help, keep the spark alive on that Green Bay team until Jordan got back in. And, me and my guys, Randall Burns and, my guy Deshaun Ruck, we talk consistently about Packers football and and we're going to have a podcast here this season at some point to talk about how the season went, all that stuff, and just express our feelings. And it's going to happen at some point. But with that being said, Malik Willis, it feels like every time Malik Willis gets in the game and does great, it's like Jordan forces himself back in the game because, hey, look, man, Malik doesn't play bad. And when he comes in the game, the Packers win. Even if I think, I don't know if it's 100% because I could be wrong, but every game that I remember he came in, they've won since he's been a Packer. So maybe they should just play him every week, even if it's for 30 seconds. I don't know. Just maybe it's for 30 seconds. I don't even really care. Just make it happen, right? At number 8, the Chicago Bears. Look, the Chicago Bears have crawled out of the bottom and have moved themselves in the first place in the NFC North. I did not see Chicago maybe doing that. I had them third place, maybe second place, depending on how good this team actually will be. Ben Johnson's got them playing well, and they're winning the games they're supposed to. That Vikings game was a really good win for them, despite, whatever. But the Vikings are a division opponent. You got to get that win. So shout out to the Bears. They did what they need to do, and they're number 1 in the NFC North. They deserve it. At number 7, I'm not going to say a lot of good things about Chicago Bears. At number 7, the Seattle Seahawks. Tough loss to the Rams, 21-19. It was a battle. Sam Darnold did not have a good day. Sam Darnold had 4 interceptions on the day, no touchdowns. 29 for 44, 4 picks. And that's, you don't want to see that for Sam Darnold. But look, every now and then quarterbacks have bad days. You just don't want that to continue. But a tough game, and a game they still had a chance to win. And that's the crazy part. They still had a chance to win this game, and it just didn't happen. They're at 7. At 6, the Buffalo Bills had their impressive win. We talked about the win that they had over the Buccaneers. That was a slugfest. I think they scored, 66 points total in that bad, 76 points total in that bad boy. But Josh Allen, 3 touchdowns rushing, 3 touchdowns in the air. Just Josh Allen. At number 5, the Indianapolis Colts. They were on a bye last week. They did lose a couple of spots, but these other 2 teams that played this week had really good weeks, including the Eagles. Even though it was ugly, they have been finding ways to win ugly games, and sometimes that's what you got to do. The defense has been the light, and their offense is still trying to figure out what is going on. But Eagles at 4, Colts at 5. At 3, and I really wanted to. I was going to put the Eagles ahead of the Rams because they did beat them, but the Rams gave the Eagles all they can handle. Plus, the Rams to me right now are easily the best team in the NFC. I've said they were going to go to the Super Bowl. I still feel that way, and nothing's changed in my mind until they're not in the game. Rams are at 3. At number 2, the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots have ran off with a whole bunch of wins in a row. The last time that New England lost a football game, I believe, was week 3. They have not lost in a long, long time. The last game that the Patriots lost was, they lost to the Raiders and they lost to Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh is the last game they lost. Since then, they've won 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They've won 8 games since the Pittsburgh game. So they haven't lost since week 3. They're cooking. On the other end of things, the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are one team for this week. Denver's in the same path. Denver had some really rough games in the beginning, but both teams are cooking. They're just moving right along. And the Broncos, with their win over the Chiefs, same dream. I mean, they hadn't lost. The last time the Broncos lost was back in week. Boy, this is rough. Hold on. Let's preseason, y'all. Hold on. I'm checking. I'm just going to make sure I'm getting this right. But the last time that they lost was week 3 when they lost to the Chargers, and they were 1-2. They have not lost since then. Since then, they've beaten the Eagles. They've beaten the Broncos, the Jets, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Texans, the Raiders, and now the Chiefs. And then their next game will be on Sunday night. Game I will be attending as they take on the Commanders. And so I ain't saying anything, but there should be another win. At least it's supposed to be. We shall see. All right, here it is. 49ers, Packers, Bears, Seahawks, Bills, Colts, Eagles, Rams, Patriots, and number one for the third straight week, the Denver Broncos. There it is. Power rankings locked and loaded, ready for week 12. And now we're going to finish this up, ladies and gentlemen, the way we do every single week, and that's with the finale. All right. So, finale for week number 11. We get in here, kind of wrap up things and where they are at. Well, first of all, let's give you our Kings of the Gridiron for week 11. Offensive side, Bryce Young for the Carolina Panthers, 31 for 45, 448 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. When people wanted to give up on Bryce Young, Bryce Young didn't give up on Bryce Young. Dave Canales and the crew didn't give up on Bryce Young. They gave him some time, and they sat him down to get himself together while Andy Dalton took over the reins last year. And since he's gotten the job back, it doesn't look like he's letting it go anytime soon. Great play by Bryce Young and a nice win. So shout out to Bryce Young, his first ever King of the Gridiron. And the man who locked in his third King of the Gridiron, his second of the season, Myles Garrett. 5 tackles, all solo tackles, 4 sacks. All his tackles, 90% of his tackles, or 80%, I could be mathing that wrong, but 80% of his tackles are sacks. It's amazing. And unfortunately, another loss. And both times that he has won, they lost, which is insane. But nevertheless, shout out to Myles Garrett. He is the defensive King of the Gridiron for week number 11. Next, let's go to our MVP race. Boy, the MVP race is locking and loading. Now, there's a part of me that wanted to put Josh Allen into Daniel Jones' spot, but I don't feel like Daniel Jones has done enough to lose it yet. They're still winning. They've been on top of things. I got him at 5. Myles Garrett is into the chat, leading the league in sacks with 15, and he's cooking. At 13, at number 3, we got Stafford. Stafford's doing his thing. The Rams are 8-2. They smoothing it out right now. At number 2, Drake May. Now, a lot of people have Drake May number 1. And I would, but what I've seen Jonathan Taylor do for that Colts team, to me, has been a bigger thing than what that Drake May has done so far. It's still early, and I think right now, if I truly had to choose, it's definitely between those top 3 people, Taylor, May, and Stafford. I don't know if Stafford can, pull it off, but if Taylor keeps the way he's going, he could be the first running back to win it since Adrian Peterson way back in 2000, I think it was 2009, 2012. It's been a while, so we shall see. Now, let's head to if the playoffs started today. Look at this. 2 teams at the top that kind of surprising here. But on the AFC side, the Denver Broncos have claimed the top spot right now. If the playoffs started today, they will be on the bye. The number 2 seed would be the New England Patriots. They would take on the Jaguars. The number 3 seed Indianapolis Colts would take on the Chargers. The number 4 seed Steelers would take on the Bills if the playoffs started today in the AFC. On the NFC side of things, boy, some of these are, it's crazy because there's like 2 division matchups. First of all, the Eagles would be the 1 seed. The number 2 seed Rams would take on the number 7 seed San Francisco 49ers, which would be a very interesting match between 2 bitter division rivals. Speaking of bitter division rivals, the number 3 seed Chicago Bears would take on the number 6 seed Green Bay Packers if the playoffs started today in Chicago. That jig would be nasty work. Let's hope that's not the case. I with the Chicago team, I hope that's not the case. And then my Chicago Bear friends that I know, they will probably have some good bragging rights after that game. At number 4, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will take on the number 5 seed Seattle Seahawks. And look, the way this is going, we're nowhere near close to really truly figuring out who's the number 1 seed on either side. The Colts, it's a 3-man race. In the NFC, it's probably, everybody in the conference still has a really good shot. I mean, the 49ers are only 2 games back in it. Everybody else is like a game and a half. Packers are probably 2 games because the Eagles have the head-to-head matchup. They got a half a game lead. Chicago's got a half a game lead over Green Bay. The Seahawks are a game behind the chart, like the Rams. There's a lot. there's a lot going on. And if Tampa Bay's not careful, that's going to be the Panthers in a week or so. So there it is. Now, let's head to your boy's record. Look, your boy's having his best season yet picking games. 101 and 62-1. The last couple of weeks cooking. I was 9-4 in week 8, 10-4 in week 9, 10-4 in week 10, 11-4 this week. 4 is the magic number. That must be my mom, and her, magic trip 4s for all the lottery players out there. That was her favorite numbers to call out. So, yeah, right now, your boy's cooking. And I was hoping last week that I would get to 100 wins by week 12, and I still got 16. So I don't know if I can get to 200, but I'm going to push it. And I want to beat my record from last year, which was I had 71 wins last year. So if I can beat that, I'll feel really good. Now, to tonight, I've got the Bills winning 34-21 over the Texans and moving my Thursday night football record to 9-3, which would be great heading into next week's 3 triple header on Thursday night football, which Thursday night they have Thursday night football next week, but they have the Thanksgiving festivities next week. The Packers take on the Lions, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys, and the Ravens and the Bengals. So they got some pretty solid matchups for Thanksgiving next week. And now my picks for this week to finish it up. I got the Bills, the Ravens, the Packers. I'm never picking against the Packers and the Vikings. That's just not happening. The Colts, the Bears, the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Lions, the Jags, the Browns. The Browns, that's right, the Browns. Shador Sanders-lay Browns over the Raiders. We'll see. The Saints, that's right. I picked the Saints. I think the Saints play the Falcons this week. I picked the Saints to win. I don't like the way the Falcons are playing football. And then I got the Eagles, the Rams, and the 49ers to round it up. On the bye this week, we got the Broncos, the Chargers, the Dolphins, and the Commanders. Of course, the Dolphins and Commanders coming back from Spain. They get their week off to kind of get themselves rested up for their next games. All right, everybody, that's it. Episode 190 in the books here, 101. Thank you all for tuning in for another episode. It's always a pleasure. It's always an honor to have you guys to be a part of it. And I cannot wait to see, what happens this week. And hopefully your boy has another great week. I'm trying to have another 12, 13 win week. Your boy trying to kill it. I want the perfect week. It's going to happen at some point. But at this current time, the NFL is funny. So it never ends up happening that way. With that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you. For all the Bowie TV watchers out there, all the Legacy Maker viewers and watchers out there, truly appreciate you guys. Y'all have a phenomenal weekend. Enjoy your football. I know high school playoffs are going along in a lot of places. College is in the mix. They're getting closer and closer to championships and division titles and all that fun stuff. So be on the lookout for that here in the next couple of weeks. I'm your man, Darrell Owens, Legacy Maker Sports Network. Appreciate you all, and we will see you all next time. One. Welcome to the 101. When it comes to ratings, man, we number one. I get the truth, then I give them the scoop. If anybody got a question, I give them the proof.